through chat. So hopefully we can actually all do that. We can go to, on Google Meets, there's a chat where we can type things in. People have already been typing, as you can see. And yeah, so try to ask questions through chat, and I'll be looking, as well as the other moderators, if I don't see it. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so welcome back. This is day 4 of learning HTML. And yeah, there's not much to say. You guys have done really good job so far. I saw the blocks that were submitted. I don't know why I looked at them so late. I should have looked at them earlier, but they were really, really, really good. I was very impressed by the blocks that were submitted. So yeah, good job so far, everybody. And yeah, let's just continue doing a good job. So today we're going to be discussing HTML tables. So does anybody have any previous knowledge with HTML tables or tables in general? Do you know what I refer to when I mean tables? Just curious. On the first homework. Oh, the SOLOLEARN box. Charts. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if I got what you're saying too well, but yeah, from what I'm seeing in chat, charts, tables, yeah, those are all HTML tables. So it's good that we already have a previous understanding. So we're just going to go through it again for people who don't know it as well as you do. So what is an HTML table? So an HTML table is a table written in HTML. A table is a type of data arrangement. Other types of data arrangements you might be familiar with are bar graphs. You might have had to create these in school. Pie charts are another arrangement, and there are many others as well. Tables are widely used in communication, research, and data analysis. The reason we're specifically learning HTML tables is because it's one of the more popular and it's very straightforward. Just looking at the data analyzing is a lot more straightforward. Not really any visuals, but yeah, so HTML tables. So data analysis, if you're not familiar with this term, I guess you could say, it's essentially just reviewing information or investigating information because you have information, which is your data, and then you're analyzing it. So you're looking into it carefully and you're seeing what the data is trying to tell you. So yeah, the main purpose of data analysis is to look at what collected data is trying to tell us. So what are HTML tables used for? HTML tables are specifically used for displaying data through tables in a web browser. It makes sense to use an HTML table when you want to organize data that would look best in a spreadsheet. If you're not familiar with spreadsheets, I can actually load one up for you guys. But a spreadsheet is just an electronic document where data is arranged. You may have heard of Google spreadsheets or Microsoft Excel. And yeah, so there are also something to know is that there are some things that should not be displayed in a tabular format just because it wouldn't make any sense. So it's very easy to mix up the logic with tables and how you use them. So any questions so far? I usually have to ask any questions. So any questions so far about anything we've covered? Data analysis, tables? I wasn't saying tables are used in Microsoft Excel. These two are examples of the electronic documents or spreadsheets, sorry. So like electric documents. So I can actually load up one for you. So these are just examples of spreadsheets. If you're not familiar with what spreadsheets are, you're probably going to be using them in the future from what it looks like. And yeah, so I guess I can actually load up a spreadsheet for you guys. So one you might be familiar with is Google Spreadsheets. That's a spreadsheet I've used. Let me actually load this up on another tab. Yeah. Sorry, your mic. Pardon, what did you say? You cut out for a second. Yeah. 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 The moderators and the admins inside this meet right now should actually try to get you in the Google Meets. So if you look at chat, they'll probably be talking to you. So yeah, you should also type your questions in chat as well. But anyways, let me load up a spreadsheet for you guys to look at. Okay, so we're gonna go here. Just gonna X out of these extra tabs. I'll drag this up here. So let me make sure that's all good. My screen's still being shared. Okay, it is. And we'll continue on. So this is what a spreadsheet looks like. Once again, this is Google Spreadsheet. It looks like it's still loading up, so I'm not going to do anything yet. But anyways, this is what it looks like. It's also organized in rows and columns, of course, and you can insert data within these individual cells. That's pretty much the basis of it, but it can be very useful in doing a lot more complicated things as well. For now, we're just going to show what it looks like. Okay, so for example, maybe you could be collecting names and last name. You could say that's data. So I could just go name. And this is a quick example because we're not going to be using spreadsheets. Last name. And down here you could have name. So name. So that's pretty much spreadsheets. This is not a great example, but it can be used for very complicated things. And yeah, so it's just used to organize data as well, you could say. Okay, so exiting out of that again and going back to the presentation. Hopefully we have a better understanding of tables, but we still have a lot more examples coming up. So once again, this is pretty much what it looks like. We have data in between these boxes. And yeah, data or HTML tables are organized into rows and columns. So our data is organized into rows and columns. So do we all know rows and columns? Sorry, I actually wasn't looking at chat. Okay, so we all know rows and columns, but once again, it's all right if we don't know rows and columns. It's easy to mix up the two. So yeah, rows and columns. Okay, so first things first, rows run horizontally and columns run vertically. So once again, it's the way. Okay, thank you for saying that quickly. I actually just noticed that as well. I don't know why it stopped presenting, but anyways, it should be presenting again. Let me check. Okay, yeah, it should be presenting again. Thank you for that. So yeah, columns run vertically and rows run horizontally. So that's pretty much the simplest thing you'd say. Vertical is like up to down, horizontally is like left to right. And yeah, so we have a couple more examples of that as well. So seatings, places with seats are usually organized into rows and columns. Maybe a church or maybe even a movie theater. Those seatings are organized into rows and columns. So let me turn on this laser pointer so we can actually see what I'm pointing at. So possibly from here to here, we could say that's one row. And then down here, all the way to here, that's the next row. Down here, all the way to here is the next row. And it just keeps continuing on. Here you can say the same thing. Here to here could be one row, or all of this could be in one row. The next line could be all one row. And yeah, so columns are just going down now. So it's going straight down for each individual chair. So yeah, let's continue on. Somebody's trying to join this. Okay, good. Okay, so here's another good example of a table. You might have done something like this in math class in school. This is a table, and we can actually analyze the data in the table. So for one, I guess I'll make a statement, something I picked up from seeing this table, and then maybe you guys can try as well. Okay, so the first thing I saw on this table, or an example I can say, is that for Kim and Lori, they have the same amount of study hours, and then they both got different grades. So from that, I can say I picked up that the way you study, it's important that you study effectively in order to get a good grade. And sometimes it's not only just time that matters in your grade. So that's one point I picked up. I don't know if that was a good example, so I guess I could say something else. So maybe I also noticed that Marissa had a study time of 1 hour and she got the lowest grade out of everybody, being 78, which is not really even a bad grade. So yeah, so I could say the less time you study, the lower grade you're going to get at. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. That was just me analyzing data to further explain data analysis. So could somebody try maybe analyzing something in this table, something you picked up, maybe a fact you noticed, or something you came to the conclusion of? Okay, so it's all right if we can't. I'll give another example again, just of analyzing data. Again, this is not too related to specifically HTML. Okay, so you could say that's analyzing data. Yeah, so that was good. We would also come to a conclusion. So usually you want to come to a conclusion. In this case, you can say the conclusion is it's important that you study effectively, and sometimes study time, the amount of time you dedicate to studying, isn't all that factors into getting a good grade. So let's look. Bob only studied for 2 hours and got a bad grade of 84. Okay. So yeah, you can say that, and you can come to the conclusion that the less time you study for, the lower grade you get. So we've just analyzed data, or you can say we've investigated data. We looked into the data more. And that's typically what we do with tables in HTML. That's what we do in tables in the real world. Okay, so moving on, this is a good example of a table. What makes it a good example is that we clearly have the headings for our table. We can 84% bracket. Yeah, we clearly have the headings for our table. We have student, study time, grade. We have everything organized clearly, so we can easily look at data. If we see Bob, we can easily go to what his grade was. We can easily go to what his study time was. We can do that for anybody. And yeah. So that's a good table example. Something on top of the table, once again, you might have already done this in school, is that it has a title, so we actually know what this comparison is or what this data discusses. Okay, so let me make sure I'm looking at chat again. My doubt is what tables are helpful for. Okay, so we actually have some examples of where we use tables. There are many websites you visit that use tables, and we'll just be looking into that shortly. Okay, yeah, so somebody already answered that question for you, but yeah, I'll be showing you examples as well shortly. Let me see. What is a table? Okay, that was just answered. Pat got higher pay than Bob. Okay. Moving on. So that's a good table example. This is what we want our tables to look like. We quickly analyzed the data in the table and we understood it clearly. So this, yep. So a lot of the things you're in the future, if you continue learning HTML and you become a pro with it, you're actually going to be using tables quite frequently, I believe. We're going to be using tables ourselves in HTML, and I also have some examples coming up where you see tables, because you probably almost look at a table almost every day. There are different forms of tables. It's not always just it's actually always usually analyzing data, but it's not always the type of data you think you're analyzing. It's not always just numbers and looking at what's more or less. So we're actually looking to that shortly. So if that doesn't answer your question when I get to that slide, we can try something else to answer it. So anyways, this is a bad table example, and you can probably guess why. It's not organized. Tables are used to organize data, and you can't really call this a table since it's not organized. And yeah, so it's difficult to understand, and it doesn't convey a conclusion fast enough to the viewer. So I'm showing this to you guys just to show the logic behind tables, and how if you decide to create a table in your own web page, you have to make sure it's an efficient table and the criteria of actually creating a good table that people can look at. So somebody said, I still don't get tables. Okay, thank you. Okay, so somebody said they still don't get tables too well. Thank you for that. Somebody said they still don't get tables too well. So pretty much, if you're familiar with a bar graph, that's a way of displaying data. So you could compare things with a bar graph. That's a way of displaying data. You might be familiar with bar graphs, and you could just say tables are another way of doing that. So hopefully that answers your question. I'll keep looking at chat. Okay, so here's the bad table fixed. We have the titles now, and then we have our data more organized, and we can easily look at it and understand the data. So we'll speed through that. Okay, so there are actually unique styles of tables. Here's one, a multiplication table. So once again, this looks like a lot. You might have seen a multiplication table in the past. It's used as a tool to quickly perform multiplication operations. So yeah, this is a table example. This is more unique. Most tables maybe aren't tools to perform operations, but this is one. So yeah, you can do things like 7 times 7. You can do everything up to the 12th time table. And yeah, so it just makes it easier. So you can do stuff like that on your web page if you would like. So yeah, this is a multiplication table. Once again, we can see that it's also organized into rows and columns. So that's one way we can tell it's a table. We can also see that just the numbers are organized across the table itself. And yes, that's a multiplication table. So here's another real world example of a table. This is one you might be seeing every day. It might be on your fridge at home. This is a calendar. So this is for May 2020, a different month. So yeah, here we also have the headings again. We have data being organized, and we have rows and columns. So that's how we can call it a table. So let me look at chat, make sure. Okay, that makes more sense. That's good. Okay. Name, favorite food. I still don't get tables. Okay, well, we're about to make some for ourselves. So maybe once we get into the process of making it for ourselves, it'll make more sense. Of course, it's not mandatory that you have a table in your web page. It's just a good skill to know how to use. And you're probably going to be using tables a lot in school. I'm almost certain you guys are going to be asked to create tables in school. So this is also helpful for that. But if you do need a table on your web page, maybe if it's a calendar you need, or maybe it's statistics you want to show somebody, a table would be great for that. Okay, so this is an example of calendar, and yeah. Okay, so getting into creating our own tables in HTML. So to do this, we use the table tag. The table tag defines a table within HTML. The basic elements that make up a table include th, td, and tr. The table tag is also like a block element. So we're just going to stop right here for now, and we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Since we just pretty much learned a lot about tables, and now we're actually learning how to create our own in HTML. So okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Good job so far. I'm just going to get a drink of water, and I'll be back. So I'll be looking at questions. So if you have any questions, start thinking about how you want to write them down, and then you can put it in chat and I'll answer them. Okay, so I'll be back. Okay, so some people might have also taken a break. I guess I'm back now, but we'll wait one more minute until we get started again. So now's the time to like get out of your chair, maybe stretch if you've been sitting down for a while. Yeah. It depends on what you're sharing your screen for. What would you like to share your screen for? You could do that in the future later. This is, I guess I'm getting ahead. Then later you'll be able to show a presentation. But for now, let's not do that because we do have a time, so we can't do that now. So maybe we can do that in the future, but not now. And usually, no, you cannot share your screen. Okay. Okay, so I guess we'll get started again. Okay, so for those of you who are just a little bit confused of what's actually going on, so I'll break it down a bit. So for the first part, we discussed what tables are in the real world, because they might be a little bit complicated if you're not already familiar with them. So yeah, we discussed what tables are. We discussed how to create tables, or not how to create tables. We discussed how tables are created. We discussed some examples of tables and how maybe tables can be very useful to do certain things. Just organizing data. So if you don't have any data to organize, you have no reason to use a table. But yeah, that's a table. So now we're actually going to be talking about creating our own tables. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So yeah, I guess we'll get started now. 1 second, I actually have to sneeze, so I'll mute my mic. Okay, I just sneezed. Okay, let's continue. So yeah, we discussed what tables are because they might be complicated if you're not familiar with them. We discussed some examples of tables just so we can know what tables are. So if we know what tables are now, we're all good to continue on. So does anybody have any questions before we continue on? Because we pretty much completed the first part of today's session, or today's camp. Okay, so if there are no questions about tables in general, we can continue on and start creating our own tables. Okay, so first things first, to create our own table, we need to use the table tag in HTML. There are also 3 other tags we need to use. We need to use the TH tag, the TD tag, and the TR tag. The table tag is a block element. So we haven't talked about block elements, but we're going to be discussing that now. And yeah. So block elements. So a block element is any element that starts a new line and uses the full width of the page by default. A block element can take up one line or multiple lines and has a line break before and after the element. So the opposite of a block element is an inline element. So the inline element is the opposite of a block element. An inline element is an element that is able to have multiple elements on the same line by default. So this might be a little bit confusing to understand right now. So we're actually going to go into SOLOLEARN's code playground and test it out for ourselves. because once again, this is more of a visual thing, block elements and inline elements. So we can actually tell if an element is a block or inline element. So let's just look at this example here just to show how block level elements work and how inline elements work. So this white background, treat it as if it's your web page. It's the main part of your page. It's the body of your web page. And yeah, so a block element, two block elements are the H1 tag and the P tag. These are block elements. So what makes them block elements is that they take up the full width of the line. So this color in the background represents how they take up the full width of the line, and you can't put anything else on the same line. So yeah, we can't have the H1 tag, we can't have the heading, and we can't have the text on the same line because they come as block elements. So there are ways we can actually alter this and change it, but that's for another class. So inline elements. Inline elements can be on the same line. Inline elements can just be on the same line, and then they can take up the full width of the page, depending on how many actual inline elements there are. So you can see that we have an example here. The EM tag is an inline element, and we can have more inline elements, which also just take up this width. So we can have multiple things on the same line for an inline element, and we can have only one thing on one line for the block element. So hopefully that makes sense. We're actually going to test this out for ourselves. We're going to figure out if some things are inline elements or block elements. So let's get out of here. Let's go to Code Playground. So I'll go full screen so we can see that better. And we're going to zoom in. So first things first, we're going to test out something we've already discussed, the H1 tag and the P tag. So I'm going to write H1. I'm going to write a heading. And we're going to go down P1. I'm going to write a text. Okay, so we'll look at the output of this and we'll see what happens. So we get this output. So just to make it even more clear before I say anything. Okay, thank you. Okay, yep, thank you for that. I don't know how I'm getting muted, but I guess it's all right since I'm not anymore. Okay, that's okay. So if you guys can't see what I'm writing, let me zoom in a bit so we can see better. Okay, so we have an example here. Just to test it out even more, I put both of these on the same line. So I put the H1 tag, it still opens and closes here, and I have the P tag coming right after. So if I press run now, okay, I noticed that I was muted that time. Okay. Okay, thank you for telling me. I'll keep an eye out if I get muted. So yeah, we have the H1 and P tag. They're on the same line. It's still going to work as it usually does. We'll press run again, and it still appears like this. So if you didn't already know that, it doesn't matter if you have your tags on the same line. Technically, you could have every piece of code on the same line. You could have your HTML tags on the same line and then everything on the same line. But the reason we put things on multiple lines is because it's just clearer to read. So I'll do that again. And yeah, so we'll put this now, and we get this output. So we can see that this is the H1 tag over here, and then we have the P tag over here. So could somebody tell me if the H1 tag is a block element or an inline element? Okay, you said it. You think it's an inline element. So could you tell me why you would think it's an inline element? What's the characteristic of an? What's the characteristics of an inline element? Because an inline element, okay, somebody said block element as well. So an inline element is able to have multiple elements on the same line, but a block element can only have one element on its line. It doesn't share lines. So block element. So block element. Okay, yeah, so it is a block element. You got that correct, Samantha. No problem, Iomide. It's really easy to mix up the two of them. But yeah, the H1 tag is a block element. So I'm going to do something else now, and this will help us reveal about the P tag and see if it's a block or inline element. So I'll put something on. No problem. Okay. I'll put a text to Okay, so now we can see it again. So now we can see we have a p tag here, and then we have a p tag here. So could somebody tell me if the p tag now, this p tag over here, if it's a block or inline element? That's just how I highlight. That's just how my text highlights. That's just how I didn't change anything. I think it's because of the system I'm using, the computer I'm using. For you guys, it's probably going to be blue, but yeah, so it's a block element. And yes, it is a block element because it takes up the full line. So that's what the table element is as well. It's also a block element. So we can't actually create our table yet because we haven't learned how to do that. We're about to, but just in advance, we can write the table tag since we learned that's how we define a table in HTML. And yes, this is going to be a block element. So hopefully we know block elements and inline elements. That's going to be very, very, very useful in the future for when we start doing more fun stuff, I guess you could say. So let's get out of here, go back to the presentation, and we'll continue. So that's block elements and inline elements. So let's get started with our table. So making a table actually isn't too complicated in HTML. We have tags that pretty much do all the work for us. So first things first, to define a table row in HTML, we use the TR tag. So the TR tag just specifies the rows, and remember, rows are the ones going horizontally. So we have multiple rows. In this case, we have 3 rows. So that means we see the TR tag opening and closing 3 times in our HTML code. So hopefully that makes sense. For now, you can ignore the TH tag and the TD tag because we're about to get into that. But yeah, we just use the TR tag to define a table row within HTML. So next, the TH tag. So we use the TH tag to define a table header within HTML. So for most of the tables you've probably used, you've seen that the first row is usually the header and it has titles for everything that's under it. So the TH tag, what this does is that just bolds out the titles more. So the first thing the user looks at is the titles. So you can see that with the TH tag, pointy, flat, and wet are bolded, and they stand out more than the data, the other stuff, the other pieces of data in the table. So hopefully that makes sense as well. We're going to be writing this ourselves, of course, just so it makes even more sense. Okay, so next, the TD tag. So we use the TD tag to define a table cell within HTML. So in the picture on the right, without counting the table headings, we have 6 data cells, and we can also see that appear in the code. We can see that the TD tag is opening and closing 6 times in our code. So once again, this is just the normal data we've collected. It's not going to stand out because it's not the TH tag, and it's just normal collected data. So yeah, we can see it correlates. In this table row, on the second table row, we have mountains, plains, rivers. And we see it over here as well, mountains, plains, and rivers. So that's an example of using the TD tag. So now technically with this, we can create our table, but there's one actual problem we ran into. So with all the examples I've been showing you, this is what our expected output was. So we have our HTML code again, just to reemphasize. So we have the table tag wrapping around everything because it defines the table itself. We have the TR tags opening and closing multiple times. Those are each of the rows. And then in between each row, so in between each TR tag, we have our table data. And then if we want for the first row, we can have the table header. So that's different from the table data, and it's more of a title. Okay, so yeah, this is our expected web browser output. There's one huge problem that you might notice. So if we were to actually just copy and paste this code into our SOLOLEARN code playground, this would be our actual output. So we see here, this is not what we expected our table to look like. So we have name, favorite color. We still have all the same data. We even have the table heading being bolded, but we are missing something that's usually key to tables, being the bordering and the spacing out. So right now, this could be easily just called normal text, and it would be kind of hard to pick up that this was meant to be a table. So think about the tables or tables in HTML is that if you don't specify a border for the table, it will be displayed without borders. So you actually have to specify a border for the table. Okay, so to actually specify a border for the table, so basically to create a border for your table in HTML, you need to use the style attribute. So the style attribute is used to define style information for specific elements within our code. So we're not going to get into this too much now. This is more of just going to be using it just so we can get that effect. Because styling our work is a whole other topic, and we're actually going to be covering that next class. That can be its own whole class. So yeah. So we're going to be doing this for ourselves now. We're going to create our own tables, and we'll get into that copy and paste code we're going to use quickly just so we can create our own table. So let's zoom in here and let's start with the table. Okay, so I'm actually going to need your guys' help. So what tag do I use to define a table in HTML? Can somebody type that in chat for me? So I need a tag that I would use to, I'm just going to copy and paste whatever you guys write. Okay, so yeah, the table tag. That's the tag I use to actually define the whole body of my table in HTML. So table. So boom, we have that. So of course, we're going to write stuff in between that because that's where all the stuff in our table goes. Okay, so I need to make a table row now. I need to make my first row in my table. So what tag do I use to do that? I'm waiting for you guys. I need your help for this one. TD, TH. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of different answers here, but we can actually test out each one. So the first one I'm going to test out is TD. So I'm going to go TD. I'm going to go TD. I think I have another sneeze coming on because of spring allergies. Or sorry, seasonal allergies, not spring allergies. So TD, and I'll put in, or actually, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to say the correct answer because it's really, I don't even know what I'd be doing. Okay. So the correct tag we're using is the TR tag. And we can kind of guess because TR is short for table row. TD, you could say, is short for table data. It's those individual cells. And then TH is short for table header. So yeah, we use the TR tag to create our first table row. So that opens and closes. So boom, we have that done. Then now here's where we start putting our data. From here, we can do whatever we would like. So I have another question for you guys. For my first row, because I see in most people's tables, I want it to be more of a heading and I want people to look there first. So what tag would I use to do that? To create titles for basically for the table, for the individual columns in the table. So what tag do I use to do that? TH. Okay, so that is correct. We use the TH tag, short for table header. So in between here, I can write my first header, and I'm going to make my header. Let me think. I actually need to create a table. So let me think of what this, or actually any suggestions of what I should make a table about. That could also be helpful. So what should I make? What should my table be about? It can be about anything. It can be about just collecting first and last names, favorite color. Okay, so yeah, we can do favorite colors. Okay, yeah, TV, let's say favorite colors. So be favorite colors. So the first thing I'm going to do is name and favorite color. I could also do age, but actually, we'll add age later. But for now, we're just going to do name and favorite color. So name, that's my first table heading, and the next one is table or favorite color. I'm just going to put fave color. Okay, so we've done that now. We're going to press run, steam out and press run. And then we have name and favorite color. We know this isn't spaced out yet, but we actually have a way of solving this quickly. So something you can do is that if we remember, right now our table's taking up a tiny space, and we can actually use one of the attributes. This is just a trick we can do. So we can use the width attribute if we remember that. From images, we can use that for other elements as well. So for now, just to make it look better, I'm going to use the width attribute and then equals quotations. And then from here, you can put the size, or you can actually put a percent, and that percent's taken out of the actual size of the page itself. So for now, I'm just going to say 100%. This is just an extra trick you can do. Say 100%. I'll press run, and then now my table is a lot more spread out. And pretty much when you say width 100%, that's saying let the width be the width of the page, the width of the white background itself. Okay, so we have name and fave color. So those are our two things, and that's our first table row. So now I want to start inserting data about our actual table. So could I get some people's names who would like to be on this table themselves? Would anybody like to be on the table, or will I make up names? I guess there's already a table I can use. So, okay, we'll try this. So yeah, we have our next table row, and in this table row is going to be some data. So this is next row and has the first names and stuff. So watch this. Tell me what this is going to do. I'm going to do TD. I'm going to do, because that's table data, and I'm going to put it in a name. So like that. I'll put another, and I'll go, let me think. What do I want to do? I'll just put another name as well. Okay, so somebody tell me what they think this output will be. What do you think is going to happen? Or actually, you guys don't have to say. You can just imagine in your head and see if you're correct. So we have table rows, and then we have another row coming after that with table data. So can you imagine what this output is going to look like? So we're going to, yep. Pardon, did you say something? So you think Adere and then Asda, I guess you can pronounce that, are going to go under name and favorite color. So it's going to be Adere, Asda, or is it going to be all under name? What do you think the output's going to look like? Because this is a little bit of a tricky question. That's probably just because I'm presenting something as well. So as my camera is me, and then my presentation is me. But anyways, yeah, going back to the question. So to answer a question, we can look more carefully at the table and understand how it works, because that's going to be important. So first tag we can ignore. We know that creates our actual table. So that's table done. So now we're creating our table row. So this right here is our first row, and then this is our second row. So what we're actually curious about is how this is going to be displayed. Okay, no problem. Okay, no problem. Hopefully it's here now. Okay, so instead of actually just blatantly answering this question, we'll see it for ourselves. So let's just look at it again. We have our row 1, and then we have row 2, and then now we have our data here. So let's run this. And then this is our outfit. So the reason, if you're wondering why this is coming out to the side, is because we actually have to use something to style it to make the text in the center. But anyways, yeah, so this is how it correlates. So this is our first row, and it actually goes with the order we have everything in. So if we have name coming first, the first table piece of data should be Adere, or the name. If we have favorite color coming second in our table heading, the next row should be the favorite color. So yeah, that's pretty much, hopefully that answers the question. So what do you guys think will happen if I go like this? I add another row and I say, I'll just type in more gibberish. So what do you guys think will happen? Because honestly, it makes sense to guess what you think is going to happen. This is just for fun. Another row. Well, it'd be weird if it created another row because we didn't define